Age Lead Store fans, welcome once again to a video. We're going to do something a little bit different today. I've actually got Beau Bratton with me, and he's with Ricochet 360, Speed to Contact, just an awesome CRM system. And as we've been talking about sort of introducing you to more and more technologies that are at your disposal, we wanted to get some guests on here that can actually talk specifically to the types of technology that you can use. I will make one sort of overall caveat before we start talking to Beau here. Whenever we do these videos, we are introducing you to technology that's available to put into your sales process. But of course, depending on how you're generating leads and where you're getting leads from, it's always important for you as an organization to make determinations as to what you need to do to stay in compliance and in a good legal spot with yourself and your organization. So those determinations are on you. We're just here to introduce you to some cool technology. So Beau, welcome to Age Lead Store's kind of an inaugural podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, this is awesome. So give us a little bit of background and describe kind of the technology. You're doing a CRM system, but I know you do something a lot different than the others. So give us just a kind of a thumbnail as to what your software does.
Absolutely. So it is a CRM, but it is a cloud phone system. So a fully functioning cloud phone system, a dialer system with progressive dialing, preview dialing, predictive dialing, and then marketing automation. So it does the text messaging, the emailing, it's got some social media components, and it's got chat and a lot more, but there's the thumbnail.
Very cool. And so you guys have been in business how long? I mean, you've been around for quite a while.
10 years now, almost 10 years. Yep, just coming up on it.
So
yeah, goes fast.
Cloud telephony. Well, before I get into asking you some questions about kind of sales technology, I'll have to ask you, you are related to someone really famous in one of my favorite shows. And this is still the coolest, you're kind of the coolest friend I have because of this. So tell us where we might have seen some of your family members before. Well,
you know the Joker movie now? Let's put a smile on that face. That's one of the classic lines from my dad, Creed, in The Office. In fact, he is here in LA. If anybody's in LA, it probably isn't going to air in time, but there's Comic-Con going on this weekend in downtown LA. My dad's going to be there signing autographs, but he's Creed Bratton from The Office. Yes, grossly overshadows me in my complete lack of famousness, but it is fun.
It is cool, super cool. That's one of my favorite shows. So, so let's talk specifically. I mean, a lot of the folks that are watching this and talking to us, they are using Age Leads, obviously with Age Lead Store, and something that we talk about a lot when we're using consumer data. Whether it's your own database of referrals that have just kind of been sitting around, maybe you've acquired a book of business that's pretty popular in insurance. You get in the insurance business, somebody hands you a book of business. It's a bunch of sort of database of kind of age data, and then of course you may be purchasing some leads. Tell us a little bit about kind of what you know from experience with your clients as to kind of the best way to approach follow-up and just this kind of general. We talk about developing systems, but what are some of the kind of the key things that they should be doing to just kind of initiate some follow-up on some of these older data?
Yeah, great question. So, I think that a lot of people leave out the omni-channel, which is kind of a term that gets passed around real easily these days. But I like to always look at it from the perspective of you might be dealing with a millennial and you might be dealing with your grandpa. And depending on who you're dealing with, they may appreciate communicating with you through a different medium, whether that be text messaging or whether it be email or a good old-fashioned phone call. And it was funny. Recently, Gary Vaynerchuk, the personality, said that in about a decade, everyone will stop using phones. And he believes there'll be someone sitting on their toilet and they'll just talk to an AI and do whatever they want from there and make their calls and make their appointments. I disagree. I think that the phone is not going away that quickly. I think a lot of people still like to pick up the phone and talk on it. But anyway, so strategy is you upload your data into some sort of CRM system. You got to have data management so you can keep track of the conversation. And then I like to call it hyper-targeted omni-channel communications. It's a huge mouthful, but ultimately that's our recommendation that you do. you tagging is not the best word to use, but you communicate with the client from every perspective, but in a very targeted way. So for example, if we look at the consumer finance industry, mortgage, and let's say it's a mortgage company or an insurance company and the person was in the military. Maybe there's a field that's asked if they have military experience, and the answer is yes. Or if they have a car, if it's for auto insurance and they have a certain type of vehicle, you can make a lot of determinations about that personality, or you can give them something fun. So in the email that would go out, so let's say you upload your data and then we're going to start to call on them. We're going to start to email them. We're going to text message them, and we may do some social following or messaging to them. But in those messages, you want to say their name, so you can embed their name into the email subject line, into the text message, and into your voicemails, of course. Into the, like for example, in the email, you can actually put a military background with flags. Thanks for being part of the military. Or the car could be part of the background. So you can dynamically adjust the messaging that's going out. And it's these subtle little differentiators that make a good campaign a great campaign, or I should say a good sales process, an incredible sales process. You get that uptick in conversions that makes you the number one performer, in the state, for example.
Right. That personalization is becoming so important because people, they get so many different messages, and so the one that's going to actually stand out to them is the one that has something that kind of resonates with them, right? I mean, that's just, and you can do that with the tagging. Is that primarily through email, or are you also able to pull that into text messages and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so in our system, in Ricochet, you can absolutely pull any data field dynamically into the message, into the text message or the email. And so another option other than just the design of the email could be the wording. So you can put little touch points of for your, Mazda, Miata, et cetera, et cetera. And then they know, hey, I know I provided this data. They know my information, and they're ready to go. They're professional.
Yeah. And then, one thing that I'm curious about, and we've talked to other folks about this, but just kind of this, you kind of talked about it a little bit with the Gary Vaynerchuk thing, but kind of the mobile only. And when we've talked to some people about just kind of thinking about the customer and the sale only and fully taking place on a mobile phone, a lot of people think, oh, that's a young person's thing. But actually, I'm increasingly seeing some data that's supporting the fact that kind of the boomer generation, the older generation, a lot of them don't have a computer at home anymore. They've just kind of migrated to their mobile phone and they do everything there. So what changes do we have to make to our sales process to kind of live in a mobile only and not actually a desktop sort of environment?
Yes, good point. We see on our traffic as well, the skew is more towards mobile. So I would validate that from our side, at least, of our data. A lot of people don't think about mobile on their email. So you can write your email HTML copy should be mobile friendly, and you can buy templates out there, and we provide some templates that are mobile friendly. But ultimately, that way, when it comes up on your mobile phone, whichever one it is, it's going to look a lot cleaner and not be messed up. There's nothing worse than opening up an email and it's garbled and you can't see it on your mobile phone. And you're like, well, these guys are not professional. That's part one. And then just utilizing text messaging. I mean, obviously, you got to make sure you get the opt-in and that it's all compliant. But if you have that, absolutely. Communicating via text message it's a multitude much higher conversion rate with regards to getting responses, getting that dialogue from consumers, and then embedding telephone numbers that they can click to call in your emails and in your text messages is huge, because you'll get a lot of people will just click on it and make that call right from the email or the text message.
Okay, so there's a lot that you've kind of packed in there. So I want to come back to text messaging for a second, but then I'd also don't want to, because we always try to give kind of really actionable stuff here. I want to loop back real quick to email, specifically thinking about it on mobile. Do you guys have any sort of insight into sort of what works better? Do you actually want an HTML sort of email going out, or maybe just plain text works? And then what about length? I would think with mobile phones, actually the shorter and shorter that message gets, probably the the better it works. But do you guys have any insight on kind of those four different characteristics and how you
Yeah.
shoot them?
Sure. I mean, you absolutely have to be careful. You don't want to embed too many links. You can get sent to spam. The shorter the message, more or less, people aren't going to read big, long-winded messages. They might read your newsletter if they're already a client. But if you're trying to attract a person, like for example, a lead that's aged and they've never talked to you before, then you're going to want to keep it short and sweet, and you don't really need to provide too much color. When I say HTML, you can add a little bit of HTML into the message so that it's mobile friendly. Even though text passes through okay, you can still do a few things. Ultimately, also, if you've been able, it just depends. So if you've been able to determine, if that person has been to your website, you've been able to determine whether they use a computer or not, or operating systems. You can do dynamic things of how you send the emails. But I think short and sweet and plain text is perfectly fine. Maybe a little bit of HTML, but be careful about adding too many links.
Okay, so let's switch to text message. I'm actually on the email front. I'm actually seeing a lot of people build campaigns that actually look a lot like text messages. They're that short, they're that specific, and I think kind of getting to a little bit of a strategy of saying, hey, I'm just trying to get their attention or their interest, and then I'm going to do the sales, hopefully on the phone. So going into text messaging, I think kind of the number one anxiety that I hear a lot is people like, oh, I don't want to reach out and use text message because it's going to bother them, or people are going to be annoyed with that. Have you kind of seen that change? I mean, I know I do a lot more text messaging than I ever did before, and even with used to it was just kind of family and friends, and now it's become something that I spend a lot of time with my business and clients, actually text messaging back and forth. So what do you think about that, sort of the attitudes towards text messaging?
I mean, it's night and day. More and more people, I'll tell you this much, whether they like it or not, a lot of the companies that we've had that weren't doing any text messaging at all, once they got the opt-in and they started to do it, they saw upwards of a 30% increase in application rates in the insurance space. The last one I heard recently was around 37% increase in appointments, just from turning on text messaging and starting to communicate via text messaging. So without a shadow of a doubt, people, it's an easy medium. They always see it too, because text messages pop right up on your phone.
Yeah.
And if you do it right, like you said, short and sweet, contextually targeted with their name, with whatever they're looking for, telephone number, and an opt-out, of course, and we automatically add the words text opt-out to future messaging, so that you're already showing them you're compliant, you're not trying to bother them. The uptick is incredible, Bill.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've also heard anecdotally, and I wonder if you would reinforce this, that some of the people that are doing this in their sales process or in their shop are actually saying that a lot of kind of just, again, anecdotal feedback from the client is that they actually preferred that over the phone call, because the phone call, especially during the day, which is when we call, but probably the worst time to call, because that's our work day too, but that was less interruptive of what they were doing, because they could just see the text message versus having to worry about a phone call or figure out who it is or whether or not they want to take it. What's any take on that? Or
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that comes kind of back to my original comment of you still need to do the phone call, you need to do the email, you need to do the text, and you can even do the social. Absolutely, during the day, if they're working, if this person's working, it's easy and they want to get this done. It's easy for them to communicate back and forth via text message without upsetting their boss or something of that nature. But there's other people that are at home and they just want to get it done. They want to get on the phone. They don't like typing. They don't like thumbing it in. So again, different strokes for different folks. But I do think that more and more people are definitely appreciate doing the text messaging, and they just won't answer the phone. But I think you should call them. And there's a whole strategy to the cadence of calling and the hours that you call them that are best for getting pickups and conversations. And I think you should text them, and I think you should email them, and I think you should even potentially stalk them on the internet. I'm just kidding. But maybe follow them on Twitter. Why not?
Yeah, and it probably depends on your industry too. But I think there's really nothing wrong with that. Again, for most of these leads that you're working, they've actually requested for you to follow up. They've requested a rate quote. They've requested some sort of information. So it's almost, you're kind of violating the agreement if you don't actually actively follow up and do your best to sort of contact them. It's kind of always been my philosophy there. You mentioned putting a callable or a direct phone number into a lot of these different messages. See people messing that up a lot. Even when I get emails, there's no phone number in there, and then I got to figure out how to do it. Kind of what's the sort of the right way to do that, and where should that phone number go? Should it be direct? Does it go into the general phone number again? Do they have to do anything fancy to make kind of the click to call work? So what is your experience in using a phone number?
Great question. Quite a few things there. Number one is if you put the dashes between the area code and then the primary number, phones seem to pick that up better for click to call on text messaging. So with the dashes, same thing. Now with email, you can put the ahref, so make it a link, and you can pass some variables through there. I won't go into too much technical detail there, but ultimately if it's an email, you can add a bit of code, so a little bit of HTML on the number, which would make it hyperlink to, if they're on their computer, popping up a request to, often computers have Google Voice or some different things built into call. So dashes in between the numbers and potentially some HTML on the phone inside of email.
Okay, cool, very cool. All right, so now I want to talk about.
Actually, sorry, Bill. One more comment on there.
Yep.
In certain systems like ours too, you can have you can dynamically enter the phone number that should be called in there. So you can have a multitude of numbers, whether it's a sales email, customer service email, depending on the type of email. Ours will pull in a specific phone number and automatically embed it in there that's relevant to the type of messaging that's going out.
Gotcha. And that's really important if you want to do some more sophisticated tracking and that sort of thing, figuring out where things are coming back at you, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to jump into, because we get tons of questions about CRM, and so I would love to know kind of some best practices around CRM, just starting with some basic questions like, at what point should I start to consider a CRM, and does it matter what kind of marketing I'm doing, or just give me some sort of indication as like, okay, if I'm on this call and I'm watching this right now, what's kind of that entry point? When should I start thinking about a CRM?
I mean, if I was just running my own business and a single, entrepreneur, I would use a CRM. And so I would say that you just need to consider a CRM, or you should consider a CRM, period, if you're doing any sort of customer service or sales. And the reason is because we have limited memories. If we're working with hundreds or thousands of people, you want to know what you talked to them about last, and unless you have some sort of savant level ability to bring that back up, you need to look at your notes, and you need to keep notes so you can say, hey, last time we talked about this, because you'll convert better. So if you care about conversion, you want to remember what you talked about, and you want to get right to the point, and people will respect that you respect their time. So a CRM is really you respecting their time. So yeah, period. Everybody should consider a CRM or a lead manager. And I like to talk about the difference between a CRM and a lead manager. A lot of people, it actually took me a long time to kind of figure out the difference, and they bleed together. But a CRM really is more about nurturing your database that you already have, and tracking, different things that are going on across your database. Whereas lead management is more about the real time, or the data that's coming in and reacting to it, and triggering different things to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a key distinction. It's kind of funny. Back years ago when I was in this business, we actually I'll just tell this little funny story. There was no concept of lead management, and we had what we thought was a lead management system. And so we actually went and wrote, and you can go back and you can actually see my name. We actually wrote the Wikipedia page for lead management so that we could start to point our customers to it. But it's a key distinction, because back then when we were kind of wrestling with this, we would always say, customer relationship management, CRM system, implies that you have some sort of relationship. And at the time, again, this is 15 years ago, this thing called internet leads was just starting. And so for the first time, salespeople were getting hundreds of people that they were supposed to follow up on, but they had absolutely no relationship, and so you needed something to start to kind of help build that process. So I love that you make that distinction, because I think that's so important for people to get, is there's a whole category, especially if you're dealing with internet leads, of people that you do not have a relationship. They made a request of you, but you don't have a relationship, and so you have to handle that differently, and you have to do it at such a scale that I think is critical to whether you call it a lead manager or a CRM system. You got to bring that system in, because in order to convert into a relationship, you got to be handling hundreds of those, and your brain just can't remember all of those contacts. And so I think that's super clever.
Yeah, actually, before the next question, real quick, I have another comment on that, which is important, of how to determine what you should get. So whether, I don't think it's so important to say, oh, do I need a CRM or lead manager? Ultimately, you need something that can handle both these days. And a lot of these people are going to be buying age leads. So they're definitely going to need a lead management system. But what you do need to look at is, so if you're a larger organization, if or if you have a sophisticated organization with specific needs, you really should take the time to write down what your needs are. What are your daily operational procedures that you already do across the board, and see how you can, if there's a system out there that can streamline them all together. For example, maybe in some cases, Salesforce is kind of the go-to. Everyone thinks Salesforce, right? And maybe Salesforce is the right thing for your company if you need to do, processing, merchant processing, and all sorts of, because the App Store, you can get a lot of that stuff done. And it's all going to be in one system. But you have to realize that Salesforce is not easy to modify or configure for your specific needs. It's not just built for you. Right. And so if you're like, look, we want to keep it more simple, but we want all of the necessary components, and we want something for our space, then you should look at different systems that are built for your space that handle all of your needs. And that it's really important to write that all down.
Yeah. No, having those kind of baseline requirements, which kind of goes to my second point. So let's say you invest in a CRM, invest in a lead manager, or get Ricochet 360. When you open that box, so to speak, these systems have so much capability. Where do you recommend people start so that they can, as quickly as possible, get some return on that investment? So what's the first place to start? What's the first thing to get right when you kind of open your software for the first time, or you purchase this new CRM?
So definitely getting your data in and mapping it in. So you're gonna create your fields, or they may already be created. Like in Ricochet, we already have all the insurance fields built out. So all you really have to do is import your data, and it's going to map in. But that's step one, is getting your data mapped in. I mean, we're talking about if you already have a system, you need to migrate it over. So you want to find a system that makes that process as smooth as possible. I'm not going to oversell Ricochet here. We have an application that ushers you through step by step on how to do that. And hopefully the company you're working with has account managers that are going to hold your hand and make sure that you get launched, because if you can't get launched, you can't make money. So get your data in. And then step one really is coming up with a calling plan and an email plan. You can definitely email. I'm hoping you have the opt-in to email these people. And obviously you can call them. You should have the opt-in to call them as well. Right. So barring compliance, calling and emailing are really easy to set up and get going. In our system, what we've done is we created the blueprint, we like to call it, for insurance. So this is exactly how many times you should call the lead, the cadences of when you should call them, the text messages. They're actually all pre-built. So if you go into Ricochet, you say, I want the insurance template, you're going to get a series of emails already pre-built for you, text messages, all the phone call dialers, statuses, and fields and integrations with anybody. And then all you have to do is train your agents on, basically just set up your agents, buy their phone numbers, or port the phone numbers in, and train them on the platform, and then plug in your logo and your telephone numbers into your templates, and you're off and running. So we really do look at that, Bill. I'm glad you brought that one up. How do you get going as fast as possible, and how do you hit the ground running, right? And that's where we really invest a lot of our time and effort, is in just creating the best practice for any space, and giving that to them right on day one, so that they don't have to go recreate or create the wheel from scratch.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to have that templating structure, and to go with, depending on what your industry is, to go with, a technology that has a lot of background data. They've seen it kind of work. I think that's huge. To that point, and not to kind of tell on your customers, but as you look at clients, I would suspect that you are starting to see, or have over the years seen, some patterns as to kind of who, when they come into your system, is going to do well, and who is probably going to struggle. Are there any specific things, whether it's characteristics, whether it's the type of things they do, what kind of seems to be the pattern for the salesperson or the sales organization that comes in and just really knocks it out of the park in your system?
I think it's a dedication to recognizing the importance of building a good foundation and infrastructure, versus this is, oh, I don't want to do any work, and you just set it up for me, and I'm going to get, I want you guys to do everything for us. And we do as much as we possibly can for clients, but the people that realize, look, this is a long-term investment. Once you get this set up correct, it's almost plug and play. It's autopilot. Ricochet tries to automate 95% of what you do on a daily basis, and that's really what you want. But having said that, if I told you, okay, I want you to go out tomorrow, and I want you to set up a phone system, I want you to go find an email marketing system, a text messaging marketing system, a social system, lead management, and a dialer, and I want you to have that all working seamlessly together with reporting, so that you can just run it, and automate it all, by the way, and don't let it break. You'd be like, okay, let me have a little more time. I'll get back to you in a couple months. And so that's really what Ricochet tried to do, is we're all in one. We brought it all together seamlessly, easy to use, easy to launch, and gives everything that you need in kind of like an iPhone type of managerial way, so it's easy to configure as well and change. Having said that, it is complex. It's 10 softwares in one. And there are, let's just put it this way, there's at least 10 components of everyone's business that they should be looking at in order to operate smoothly. And you can't cut corners, and you can't say, oh, I don't want to spend time on it. Yeah, we're all busy a lot of people are working in their business versus on their business. Yep. But you really, really have to take the time, set it aside, and this is going to be a bit of work in the beginning and a bit of a pain in the butt, but once I get it right, I'm going to make a lot more money in the long run. So you got to plant that seed correctly in the beginning. The people that are successful recognize that, they put the right investment into really getting it all done and set up correctly, and not rushing their launch or trying to cut corners.
Right. Yeah, I just always say to my sales teams, you still have to make the calls, right? So you can do all these things, but at the end of the day, whether you're building that tech or investing in that technology, you've got to do some work, right? It's just not, there is no silver bullet. You still got to make the calls.
That's another good thing to point out. Sorry, Bill. Is scripting. So we have scripting built in, and so if you're going to be hiring new people, if you're opening up an office, you want to probably build that entire sales workflow. So Ricochet built a scripting interface where it's step by step. This is your opening, depending on whether they said yes or no. You click on it, and then you can say the next line. That's good for the new people, at least, that you're bringing on. But making it as hard as possible for your new employees to mess up, because there's a lot of overhead, there's a lot of turnover, I should say, in, for example, insurance. And so you want to give them the best chance at being successful, automating as much as possible and putting the words right in front of their face as well.
Yeah, no, I think we talk about scripting all the time, even for somebody who's seasoned. I mean, just to have kind of a framework that you go back to and to remind you to kind of go through certain steps or trigger thoughts on, what might be holding a client back, I think is super important. Okay, so as we kind of close out our time on this particular one, if you were to tell all of our folks, like, hey, this is the one thing you need to kind of walk away today, go back into your shop, and either do or think about or figure out, like, what is kind of that one thing that's going to help somebody be successful when they go back into their sales day?
Have you, I think it goes back to my previous comment, is your system operating like a well-oiled machine? And is the time that it's taking to fix the problems that you have worth it? If it's not, you should go look at getting the basics right tomorrow, and you'll thank yourself in a year from now.
Yeah, just putting in that I totally with you. Put in that prep time to kind of, and you said it a couple times, but getting that solid foundation so that stuff works and you can build. I see so many times people get into, they'll hear like these little tiny, like, incremental things that you can improve, and they focus so much attention on that, but their foundation is just a mess, right? So love that. Okay, so if people want to know more about Ricochet 360, want to know more about you, how do they find you? How do they check out what you have in the way of CRM and technology?
Yeah. Ricochet360.com is the website, so feel free to go check that out. 866-678-1288 is the number. 866-678-1288. You always say it twice. And then we're at Ricochet 360 on most of social media.
Okay, very cool. All right, awesome. I appreciate it so much, Beau. And we will I'll hopefully get you back here again as we do more and more of these.
Bill, always good to see you again, my friend. Thank you, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome.
Take care.
All right, we'll cut it there. Cool. So yeah, we'll schedule another time to kind of figure out if there's some more stuff that we can work on, and we'll see how this thing does.
Yeah, coming out to LA next time you're out in LA. Swing by our office, and I'll bring my dad in to go to lunch with us.
Yeah, that would be super cool. Are you going to lead Gen World or Mike Ferree's new thing?
I am. Yeah. We're a sponsor. I think we got the World package or something like that. So we're definitely going to support Michael and all over it. We just did LeadsCon East. It was a big letdown. Probably the worst. I mean, last year I did it and I liked it, but this year was horrific, by the way.
All right. They needed something. Luckily, it was at the end.
Yeah, perfect timing. No worries.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm speaking there. So if worst case scenario, we'll see out there.
Yeah, January. Sounds good.
I don't know why I picked January in Denver, but I don't know. Must make sense.
Right. I like going anywhere other than Vegas. I'll be honest. I'm so over Vegas, so it's good.
I think he's doing really well. I had actually, I don't know if you know Jesse Bedoin, but I was trying to get him in as a speaker, and Mike said he's already booked up with sponsors and speakers. So that's cool.
That is really good. That's really good.
Good stuff. All right. Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate
you very much.
And we'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds good, Bill. Take care. Bye-bye.